You know, the fact that you can read this screen, that's kind of a modern miracle, right? For most of human history, being literate was like a superpower reserved for a tiny elite. So what happened? What flipped that switch? How did one ancient book become the engine that made reading a skill for just about everyone? Let's get into it.
So, you gotta ask, how did reading go from this super rare privilege to something we just expect everyone to do? It wasn't some slow, natural evolution. No, something had to happen. It needed a powerful driver, a real catalyst for change on a massive scale.
And that catalyst? Well, it was an engine, a literacy engine, built from the pages of a single book. The idea that one text could become so central to a culture that it literally forces people to learn to read, that concept is one of the keys to our modern world.
So how does this literacy engine actually work? What are the moving parts? Let's pop the hood and take a look at the three-step process that really turned the page on widespread illiteracy.
It's a really simple but incredibly powerful chain reaction. First, a community puts one single text at the absolute center of its world. Then, step 2, understanding that text isn't just a nice little hobby. It becomes a fundamental duty. And finally, when everyone has a duty to understand it, literacy itself becomes a core social value.
Now, this engine didn't just appear out of thin air. To find the original blueprint, we've got to travel way back, a couple of thousand years, actually.
The very first blueprint was drawn up in ancient Judaism. See, the tradition of studying and memorizing the Torah established this radical new idea that faith required a deep personal engagement with a written text. And that right there, that was the first gear of the literacy engine clicking into place.
Okay, let's fast forward now to the Middle Ages. During this time, the engine was being fine-tuned. Its methods were being preserved and perfected, kind of getting it ready for the big revolution that was still to come.
And this is fascinating. In the Middle Ages, literacy was pretty much locked away in monasteries, accessible only to a select few. But, and this is the important part, inside those walls, monks were meticulously developing the tools of textual analysis. In a way, they were writing the software for a literacy revolution they couldn't possibly have imagined.
And that brings us to the moment the engine was truly fired up for the masses. This is where a single theological idea sparks a full-blown reading revolution.
So the crucial turning point is this guiding principle of the Protestant Reformation, the idea that Scripture itself was the supreme and final authority. This shifted the focus away from the institution and onto the text itself, which placed this immense new pressure on the importance of individual understanding.
This wasn't just some abstract religious debate. It was an information revolution. And when this powerful new idea collided with a world-changing technology, well, it triggered a chain reaction that would completely reshape Western civilization.
And here it is, the perfect storm. Gutenberg's printing press arrives in the 1440s. Then, in 1517, Martin Luther argues for direct access to Scripture for everybody. Suddenly, with the press, Bibles could be mass-produced in the common languages people actually spoke. The fuse was lit.
And this created a radical new social ideal. Every single person should be able to read the Bible for themselves. And think about it, if everyone needs to read, then society has to do something it had never ever done before, provide widespread education.
But the engine's impact didn't stop at basic literacy. The very methods that were used to study this one book in incredible depth would go on to help forge one of our most important modern institutions, the university.
The key here is a practice called exegesis. The easiest way to think of it is like detective work for texts. It's this really rigorous, critical method for understanding a text's language, its context, and its history on the deepest possible level.
And just look at the skills this intense practice cultivated. We're talking about mastering ancient languages, developing formal rules for interpretation, engaging in disciplined argumentative debate, and just rigorous systematic analysis. As our source material points out, these aren't just old religious practices, they are the very pillars, the actual DNA of modern higher education.
So the really crucial point is this. The centuries-long habit of studying one single book with this level of methodological rigor, well, that forged the intellectual tools that became the foundation for all academic inquiry. The disciplines we now call literary criticism, historical analysis, even legal theory, they all share a direct ancestry with this practice.
Which leaves us with a final question to chew on.
The literacy engine we've explored was powered by a single, central text that an entire culture agreed was important. So in our fragmented, fast-moving digital world today, what is our central text? Do we even have one? And what kind of skills is it demanding that we learn?